Hello and welcome to yet another video where I play a game and review it. As you probably read in the title, I'll be reviewing Nobody Wants to Die, a game that I admittedly heard very little about before playing it for the first time. The game is a dystopian noir murder mystery game set in the year 2329, which heavily leans into cyberpunk aesthetics, which I love. The world around you looks beautiful, but it's somewhat flat as you don't really get to openly explore it much, as you mainly explore in set areas, with the game being linear from start to finish. I'll address my critiques of the game first. As mentioned just now, you don't really get to explore the world around you, which I think is a real shame. The world looks so cool and has so much untapped potential, but being confined to watching it instead of exploring it was a slight disappointment. Additionally, the optimization of the game could be improved. I tend to play games using keyboard and mouse, but had to swap to controller as movements with the mouse could cause the game to look somewhat blurry, which also doesn't help. The game mechanics are rather simple, maybe a bit too simple, but the game doesn't really pride itself on being a mechanic heavy game, so this isn't as much of a complaint, rather just a personal observation having played games with much more mechanical demands. Thankfully, that's about all the complaints I have. Moving swiftly onto the positives of the game, I found that the overall experience was great. The game doesn't unnecessarily drag out the story or bloat it to tire the player out. When I was playing the game for the first time, I was so drawn into what was happening around me that I really wanted to take my time and investigate everything just so I could fully understand everything and open up as many options as possible. The gameplay experience is smooth. While I mentioned mechanics are simple, they're well executed. Mechanics tied to investigation are fun, and you find that it's neatly tied to progression of the story, although I do wonder how some of the tools work on a larger scale, especially the reconstructor. However, this is just me reading too deeply into it. I'm sure that rewinding time after the events happen in some areas but not in others is just something that happens in the future. I thought that the voice acting and audio design was good, emotions are easily portrayed and nothing felt flat. You can really sense the character change and desperation as the story progresses. Vulnerabilities are unearthed and almost uses a denial to confront the past. To work alongside this, the story highlights corruption, which naturally would be prevalent in a dystopian world. We explored dark sides of political powers and corruption within the police force. There were a few moments where I actually was shocked with the events that were unfolding before me, just because I couldn't wrap my head around what I was experiencing, along with an incredible amount of foreshadowing even from the beginning. While these moments are shocking, the game builds you up to them, rising tension slowly and executing it well instead of throwing it at the player in one large exposition. You see the struggle of losing people that are close to you and the potential fallout from it, such as drinking and drug abuse. While this isn't an upfront action the player experiences, you learn that it's all too prevalent in the world. An intriguing narrative point was the concept of immortality the game introduced. You immediately learn that technology was developed to allow people to swap their consciousness between bodies, allowing people to become immortal in some sense. As the main character, James, ironic I know, has been through a few other bodies before finding himself in the one he currently lives in, which had previous issues with drug abuse along with other health problems as a consequence of this. James Kara is an interesting main protagonist. As we play as him, we get to choose what kind of person he is, while he also shows moments of real vulnerability and insecurity of his own volition. This adds to an already gripping story as you see the world around you change, but in between this you're working on solving a case and coming to terms with all the trauma that you carry. The way it slowly bleeds into the story and the murderer uses it to their advantage was fantastic. It adds more emotions to scenes and causes the player to choose between fact and emotion, deciding how the game should progress. It almost feels like the player is experiencing psychosis throughout the game, with judgment becoming increasingly impaired and the lines between become more blurred. Visually, the game is stunning. Aside from a few optimization issues, which I think could be ironed out, the game performs great, with some of the areas towards the end of the game particularly standing out, highlighting the cyberpunk nature of the future, the dystopian aspect, and the conflict between the civilians. The music choice was excellent. It truly worked to the strength of the world around you, and also felt like an old school movie trope of a detective, which I thought worked perfectly. The game isn't one you play, rather one you experience, as it almost feels like a movie at some stages. I'd recommend playing this game if you like more dystopian, darker games which don't shy away from violence, conflict, and exploring sensitive topics. There are no good endings in this game, which perfectly represents the world that was built here. For any completionists, the game takes a little over 4 hours to play through entirely, with all achievements being collected in 2 playthroughs if the player explores the world enough and has all the options the game has to offer. As always, feel free to like the video and give me more game recommendations, or maybe consider subscribing. It helped me out and also allow me to work more closely to create the content you guys want to see. Take care and thank you as always for your time.